You're listening to the _Transformation podcast, your practical guide to business transformation.
Welcome to the _Transformation podcast. This is episode 5. My name's Joe Ailes.
And my name's Jason West.
And together we're the founders of _.
So this week we're diving headlong into the single biggest challenge in any transformation program, and that's stopping people doing what they're doing today and getting them to do something different tomorrow. That's it, the single hardest thing you have to do. And you know what's surprising? In that so many transformation programs, change management only gets thought about at the very end. So as a line manager, the first I hear about this amazing change initiative that's going to revolutionize the way we partner with our suppliers, we manage our people, or we gain true insight into our finances, so we make these better informed, data-driven business decisions, whatever that change is, it's an email that lands in my inbox telling me that I've got to attend mandatory training in some new system that we've just implemented. So surely, Joe, there has to be a better way.
Absolutely, Jason. You've hit the nail on the head just then, actually, which is don't leave it until the absolute end to do the big reveal. You have got to bring the business along this transformation journey with you, engaging the business as absolute early as possible. Because ultimately, these are the individuals that are going to be affected by what it is that you're changing. So engage with them, ask them opinion as you're designing new ways of working, because they're more likely to embrace it.
Yeah, and there's also, what is it that you're changing? And we've talked about it in a previous episode, that problem definition. You know, we're talking about a complex adaptive system of people, process, and technology, and you're making changes to it. So if you haven't engaged a broad group of people to understand what it is you're trying to achieve, then there's a pretty good chance that you're going to land something that perhaps doesn't work so well. Yeah. And at the end of the day, in most transformation journeys, what you're trying to achieve is a true change in the culture of either the business overall or that function that you're focusing on right there. Mm. So it's got to go beyond just communicating with people or training people. It's got to be a two-way, genuine conversation right from the beginning. Yeah,
absolutely. And there are many organizations out there implementing change programs that confuse comms with change.
Absolutely.
And they hope that actually I'm going to change people's behaviors and ways of working by purely providing an instruction on how to do something different. And guess what? You'll probably get there. You'll probably eventually you'll get individuals to operate to that new system, to that new process. But my word, it's going to be more painful rather than engage in the organization, and those individuals, they're going to be impacted by what it is you're changing from, as early as possible in your program.
Yeah.
And knowing that actually when you're engaging the organization at the very outset, as early as possible, you don't have all the answers to all their questions, and it's normal. It's fine. It doesn't have to be that big reveal, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
And it's okay to sort of go into an engagement piece where, there are still some unknowns. And actually, if you engage the organization in that dialogue up front, they're going to challenge you to answer the questions that they truly have, rather than you coming up with a set of comms material or training material that actually doesn't answer the exam question that end user is going to be faced with.
Yes, yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. It's being honest up front that actually, we've got this vision of where we're going. So when you hold your first big kickoff meeting, which, is typically, a month or two into the program, where you get a large group of people into a room and hopefully you get the CEO to stand up and talk to people. If it's not the CEO, then it needs to be definitely the sponsor of the program. So whether that's the CFO or CHRO or Chief Operating Officer, whoever it is, that does that kind of big stand up. This is why we need to change. This is why this is important to me personally. And this is where we're going. And they kind of outline that vision for future ways of working. At that point, when you're describing this change that's going to happen, is being honest about, well, we know these things, but we're not too sure about these areas here. And we're probably not going to know about it until maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year down the line. But asking people for their genuine input and help in defining where we're going is key.
It creates buy-in among that audience that you're asking to engage in your program. And actually, if people feel, if I take part in this program, I am actually going to shape a future that's better for me. Guess what? They're going to be much more engaged and much more willing to adapt new ways of working.
Absolutely.
Than to rock up at last minute and say, hey, please do this process in this way. So yeah, we've got plenty of experience of programs where a kickoff has happened and the program has largely been successful because it creates sort of this momentum in the organization about, okay, wow, things are going to be different in the future. I'm excited about that. Nervous at the same time. Don't get me wrong. People will naturally be nervous about what the future holds, but they're excited to be able to shape it.
Yes.
If you don't do that, the likelihood is that the change will be a surprise. The business isn't quite ready. And actually, there's a number of priorities happening in the organization that yours is now directly conflicting with those particular priorities.
Yes,
so how then it's as a sponsor, it becomes really difficult to ask the business to prioritize your communication or your training over some other critical activity that's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a really good point when you think about when you're going to land certain things. What is that regular drumbeat of activity that's going on in the business, and then overlaid with that, what are those other programs that are hoping to land something at the same time? So I think this is where having a really strong portfolio comes in. Ideally, that there is some sort of overarching transformation management office or some sort of portfolio view of all the different programs that are happening within an organization. It's got to be said, that's more often than not, there isn't a particularly strong portfolio view. So as a transformation practitioner, you're often having to look outside of your program and engage with other programs, other projects that are making change happen, and effectively run your own interference to make sure that you're not landing something at the wrong time. So it can be a real challenge, but ideally you do have that overarching view with somebody with that mandate to make sure all the deliverables are lining up across the different changes.
You're listening to the Transformation podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Transformation Capability Specialists. To find out more, visit _group.com.
I don't think that there's any business out there, considering the context in which we operate today, there is not a single business of size that won't be undergoing some sort of change.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So if you're initiating any form of change in your business, in your function, you've really got to be looking out to, okay, what else is happening across my organization, and how is what I'm doing going to change the behaviors that I'm hoping to achieve, and how is this going to conflict with everything else that's going on in the business? And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there very experienced. They'll be able to work through this, but they can't forget that they need to do that exercise. We talked a little bit earlier about how you need to have that big kickoff. And absolutely, that's so important. Any sponsor out there listening to this, please really pay attention to this, because this is really, really important. Engaging the business right up front. But it's not a one-off event.
Absolutely,
you have got to absolutely find a way of continuing that engagement with that community that you've kicked off with. And your governance structure, whatever governance structure you put in place that has your exec sticker, your project board, etc., has got to find a way of keeping the people that you've engaged during the kickoff engaged throughout.
Yes, yeah.
So that you've got that that continuity throughout the life cycle of the program. So that's really important. So sponsors out there really think this particular point through.
Yes, yeah, and those people that turn up to that initial kickoff meeting, you definitely want to be inviting them into requirements gathering workshops, or certainly members of their team if they're particularly senior.
Yeah.
But it is important when you run those workshops to have senior members as well as people who are perhaps more operational. Involve people in procurement decisions. One of the things that's worked in particularly complex organizations is this idea of an operational steerco. So when you're producing, new designs, new solutions, that you can push those through a collection of people who actually have some decision-making power within the governance structure, and really they're there to sense check that what you're doing will work operationally in this business unit in this country. And provide that feedback and constructive challenge. And they need to be the people that the members of the exec steerco fundamentally trust to ensure that things are going to work on the ground. And that's been really helpful. And, I'm drifting a little bit into governance here, but, all of this is interrelated.
It's important,
So when we look at, in the round, we've looked at kind of some of the things that you can do. If we focused into that kind of change management process, I think, there's lots of good change management methodologies out there, and, you've got to use the right one for the organization. And the important thing is to have a change management methodology. And my own personal preference is ProSci, because it just gives you this nice range of tools that just make your life easier. But what would you say are those key steps along the way that, just are a sensible approach to managing change?
You're right. Having a methodology is really important. Why is that important? Because it actually brings a little bit of structure and process, frankly, to what you're trying to achieve. It forces you to think of the right things. It forces you to think about, okay, what's the vision? What is it? What's that destination that we want to get to? Have you described that? Have you described the journey? Do you truly understand the impact that your change is going to have on across the organization? And different individuals in different geographies, different cultures will react differently to what you're trying to do. So
Absolutely.
Be cognizant of that. And one size in any transformation will not fit all. It might be a little bit provocative to some people out there that actually are trying to design common process globally. And in some cases, absolutely you can, but you've got to be mindful that there'll be different interpretations of that in different parts of the world for good reasons. And the other piece is when you're, as part of your governance structure, as part of your sign off, make sure that you include in your regular exec steering committees, etc. The evolution of your change, impact assess the change, and don't do it at go live.
Yes,
don't do it. Let's have an exercise, a checkbox exercise to make sure that we've done all our change. We trained all our managers, all our employees, our exec bought into the idea. Tick, 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 tick. Actually, don't do that. Have change management as a constant agenda item in your exec steering committee meetings.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think when you look at that piece around segmenting people into different groups is, we've mentioned kind of country perhaps. What other elements might there be? Well, there's functions. There's local geography, because people will be impacted in a different way in one location than another potentially.
Absolutely, yeah.
So really kind of thinking through those different elements and really planning the change. So actually have a plan, start building a plan as you're scoping out the program. And I think the other thing is that just this whole approach of as you're building up your understanding of the problem you're trying to solve, you're designing future state, you're gathering requirements, you're putting a business case together. If you do it in the right way, this isn't a huge additional effort to do change management. That's just embedded in the approach, because you're being genuine on how you're engaging people and understanding where the pain points are, what they see as the opportunities, and you're building that into the transformation program that is evolving over time.
So in summary, reflecting on what we talked about, there are probably 4 key takeaways from this discussion, really. So number 1, don't confuse comms and training with change. They are absolutely fundamentally different things. Number 2, engage people across the organization as early as possible. don't give them a big surprise, the big reveal at the very end, because it's less likely to be successful. Number 3, use a methodology. I mean, we have got a preference around ProSci, but actually there are others as well. Yeah, others are available.
Yeah,
there's many out there, but find a methodology that's appropriate to you, because actually that's going to give you structure around your change activities.
Yeah.
And I think number 4 is make change management a priority topic during your executive steering committee discussions.
Yeah.
And don't wait until the very end before you go live as a tick box exercise to make sure that you've done all of your change activities.
Yeah. Can I add a 5th?
Oh, go on then. Our listeners will love this.
Yeah. So I think the 5th is around managing change across the organization. So either integrating your changes in with a wider change management portfolio or a PMO of some description, or if one of those isn't available, then making absolutely sure you're managing up and out, and that you're coordinating your activities with other programs. So. Cool. There we go. 5 out of 4 in summary.
An extra sweetener for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Bonus summary material only here on the Underscore Transformation podcast. Next week, we're going to look into the future with an episode on vision, objectives, and design principles. And we hope you found this episode useful, and we'd really love to hear your feedback. So please contact the show via our WhatsApp group or via our website _group.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to like and subscribe via your favourite podcast directory.
Thank you very much.